Hi, I'm Mark, and Subliteral Network is my channel. I make art and comics, and thanks for watching. Remember to hit like and subscribe and to leave your feedback in the comments. You can read my comics, Una the Cave Bunny and Tiger Team 3, free at radiocomics.com. All these links are in the description. I post daily, 5 days a week. I post art daily on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And this is a roundup of that work in case you missed it, with maybe a little more detailed description added. I'm drawing art for a coloring book that I'm going to do, and I'm calling it a coloring book for grown-ups. It doesn't mean that it has adult material. It just means that the material isn't really targeted towards kids. So, as you can see in this drawing, it's not exactly targeted towards kids, but it is targeted toward grown-ups. And I wanted to, well, when I'm doing, my thought when I was doing coloring book drawings was to make something with a lot of detail, a lot of little parts and areas to color in, just very complicated, more complicated than I would do just normally, I guess. So I've crammed stuff in there. She got buttons and zippers and cigars. She got pockets and she's got numbers on her, and the whole background is filled with like discarded appliances. There's a refrigerator, there's like a microwave. When I do a coloring book, I would like a coloring book that's like this, with just kind of outrageous, bizarre, grown-up material that kind of really challenges you. As a grown-up, I'm not coloring in The Little Mermaid here. I'm coloring in big, apocalyptic, insane stuff that is still fun to color and just kind of takes up the time that you're putting in and is solid and well drawn enough so that you can be satisfied, at whatever level you're going to color it in. Just flat color or really go in there with color pencils and model everything. It should be a real occupation for like an adult approach. Here is a work in progress of a pencil drawing of the Hulk that I did. This is just the head for now because I wanted to, this is the way I posted it. So you're seeing that I use a lot of blue pencil when I'm kind of plotting out where the blacks are going to go, the large black areas, and just plotting generally where objects and shapes are going to be. And when I like the lines, I'll generally come in and solidify them with pencil so that I know what's going to be inked and what's going to be black and what's going to be gray or feather. Just sort of, I guess you could say I like to go in and plot things out in blue and then finalize things in graphite pencil. For a while, I was doing some art and comics for a fanzine called Rauerbrazel, which is it's a furry fanzine, and I was doing black and white art and comics for it. And I really like working in black and white. This is a bunny space girl that I drew. So after I inked her, I decided to simulate screen tones, which, I'm not going to explain about screen tones. It's the whole thing. You see those little tiny dots? They set up an area that ends up looking gray in the printing process, which is probably not really necessary to do anymore. I mean, they do it a lot in manga. It's a graphic technique that has a certain look to it. It creates a gray as well as sort of a texture. And I like the look. So when I inked it, I put those screen tones are all digital. I had some old screen tones hanging around, on the plastic sheets. So I scanned them, and I made like bitmaps or very contrasty resolution copies of them. So I applied them in, and I trimmed them in Photoshop. And the way I did the stars is interesting too, because you see how it looks like white spatter. Really, what it is black spatter. I took ink, made spatters with a toothbrush on white paper, put it in Photoshop, and then just reversed it, and instant stars. So I experimented a lot with this, and I kind of like the way the experiments came out, and I've used it a few times, and I'm going to use it a few more times because I really enjoyed that. Somehow, whenever I do comics, I always default back to this sort of stylistic approach that you saw in the Batman animated cartoon, especially the second season. Just very graphic, slightly cartoony, a little exaggerated, and just very black and white. Not a lot of hatching or gray tones in there. I really feel like that helps me to compose better when I limit the tones and shapes that are going to go in a drawing. So here, this is a full-size 11 by 17 comic page that I drew. It is in the front. You see Beast Boy from the Teen Titans there, in one of the versions of his costume. And behind him is Clayface from the Batman animated series. I don't care how they've redesigned Clayface. I'm sticking with the animated version design because I just love that one. And behind him, you see the kind of Art Deco city style of the Batman animated universe. I'm trying to teach myself to deal only with black, with white, and focusing on composition there. And I find not having so many elements, it really helps me to focus and create something that has that superheroic style. The long perspectives, the sensitive action, all these things. I really like to see that in comics. I don't like to see people sitting around in diners talking for pages and pages and just static figures sitting around a meeting table. Back in the 60s, John Buscema used to draw, like when he would draw the Avengers having a discussion around the table, they were completely animated. They were standing up, they were waving their arms around, they were kind of yelling at each other, leaning over the table, leaning back, and I feel like that's a discussion. And especially when you've got superheroic figures sitting around, they have to look superheroic no matter what they're doing. So if they're having a discussion, they have to look dramatic. And I think any comic needs that, and especially this superhero comic needs to have dynamic action. Even if there isn't any dynamic action going on the page, you've got to compose something interesting to the viewer. That is a challenge to do that all the time, and you forget it under the pressure of having to do a bunch of pages. But you have to pause and you have to remember it during your layout stage that your page has to look interesting. Otherwise, what are you doing? I'll have these pictures around that are sitting around in pencil for a while, and I use them to practice and sharpen up my inking on and my composition, because usually they're pretty raw sketches. So I take them and I work out a pattern of black and white on it to keep in practice and to sharpen up my pen and brush skills. They're usually not meant to be seen too much, but I'm working on them to develop a presentable visual style and to keep up with that so I don't get out of practice. So this is one of those, and it just sort of developed. I don't know who she is or what she does. Apparently that's a sword or a sword handle with like a giant iron bat on the end of it or something, which is kind of cool, and I like the idea of that. So I'm hanging on to this one. I might color it later, but I like the idea of someone carrying around not a sword, but a big heavy iron bat.